We all have situations, experiences, and moments in our life when we know deep at our core we have to do something different. We have to pivot. And regardless of how big or small that pivot is, it requires us to change something in our life. And that change can feel really uncomfortable. However, it is that change that is creating something entirely new. And it is that newness that creates a very different way of life in one area or multiple areas of our life. What's this all about? It is all about reinventing thyself. My name is Michelle Shutter, and I'd like to welcome you to Reinventing Thyself. I am so glad that you joined me today, because it is here that we'll move beyond our old self, our old identity, and that trailer of garbage from the past that we like to pull into the future, but really need to ditch that hitch. It is here that we'll move into that place of reinvention and embracing the newness of it all. Are you ready to step into reinventing thyself? Because guess what? It is never too late, and your time is now. Let's get started. Hey, it's Michelle Shutter. Welcome to Reinventing Thyself. Whether you are listening on podcast or you are joining me on video, welcome. I'm super honored that you have carved some time out of your day to listen to this very first episode called Embrace the Newness. Wow, what is reinventing thyself? Well, part of the foundation of it is all about change. And if there's anything that we have learned in the last 18 months or even more, it's that there are times in our life we have to pivot. And we do that intentionally at times, and we do that unintentionally at times. We do that consciously at times. We do that unconsciously at times. And really reinventing ourselves, as I mentioned, is all about change. And change is the only thing that is constant in the world, right? Like that is the only guarantee that we have in the world. But what happens when we want to pivot and we're not exactly sure? What happens when we pivot and it wasn't on purpose? What happens when we run from a pivot that we know we should lean into? What happens when we try to resist it, right? Like it generally does not work out in our favor when we try to run, when we try to resist, when we try to avoid, when that message is so clear, yet it scares us at the depth of who we are, right? Like it just frightens us to make a change, to make a shift, to really embracing, leaning into that pivot. And I can tell you from personal experience over the last decade, over my lifetime, there have been countless times where I've reinvented myself and where I've had to pivot and lean into that pivot. And the thing is, we always come out okay on the other side, but that period of time where we're beginning to lean into it, the transition of it, to really solidify it and create a foundation of reinventing ourselves can be a little frightening, can be a little challenging, and it can be a lot challenging. And when I think about reinventing myself, it like sometimes we do it on a yearly basis. Sometimes we do it on a monthly basis, a weekly. Sometimes it's even daily. And again, sometimes when we make that change and pivot, it's natural. It feels normal to us. But what happens when we want to do something that is bigger than where we are? What happens when we feel that calling deep inside of us, and we want to move into that, but yet all those fears begin to pop up? And what happens then when we feel frozen and we can't lean into that pivot, but yet deep inside of us, there's that calling that we were made for more, that we were supposed to do more, that our time on this earth should be up-leveled in some way. And that is all about embracing that newness. And When we want to move into that pivot, when we want something bigger, when we are aligned with that deeper calling, that's exactly when all those old patterns are going to show up. All those old beliefs, all those old judgments, all those old emotional responses. And what do I mean by that? Well, there was a situation probably prior in our life that is an identical match to it, in the sense that it's going to recreate a feeling. And that feeling is something just we're not comfortable with. And because we're not comfortable with it, we want to avoid it. We want to resist it. We want to push it aside and ignore it. And last night I was reading a book, and one of the things that just really hit me hard was, don't die wondering. People don't die, or people don't regret what they did. People regret what they didn't do. And so when we really embrace unknowingly that fear of reinventing ourselves, are we going to end up at our grave someday wondering? And so let's begin to embrace that newness and move beyond it, so we are not wondering, right? Like that what if, is our glass half full or is our glass half empty? That whole scenario. So this podcast, the videos that I'm going to be posting on YouTube are all going to be focused around this whole concept of reinventing thyself. And it's really about respecting that desire within and really giving it that support, really leaning into it, because that desire is the pivot, right? That desire is wanting to do something new. And when we reinvent ourselves, it's not just one little piece. It's all encompassing. It's a 360-degree compass in a sense. So, we have going, like, let's just use, cardinal directions here. East and west, we've got the mental, the thoughts, and the emotional, the feelings. If we go north and south, we've got spiritual at the north, which is a higher guidance, no matter what you believe in. And south is the physical. So the spiritual is like the unseen, and the physical is everything that we can see. And taking all four of those and doing that 360, it's all encompassing. We can't have one without the other, in a sense. We need to embrace all of it as we move forward into reinventing ourselves. And what I'm really looking to bring to you and to support you is really sharing that deeper level, that deeper knowing, that tapping into that inner wisdom, whether it is on that spiritual, emotional, physical, or mental aspects, but really bringing that into a place that is simple, that is easy, that really allows us to take a step without being succumbed by the fight or flight syndrome, without that fear, really looking at stepping into that place that really brings us fulfillment at a deeper level, and really stepping into that place of knowing and connecting to that inner knowing, that what we are supposed to do, and trusting that process of it, and letting it unfold as the way it is supposed to unfold for us. And so what I'm looking to do is dropping some podcasts for you, really bringing some interviews to you of people who have reinvented themselves and what their journey is like. Because what I have found is so many times, like, our mental part of us, our ego mind, likes to think like we're the only one that is experiencing this, that nobody else has done this. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. There are so many people who you will have similarities with on your journey as well. So to share their experiences and share their journey will only support you in embracing what is new. Because really, when we start something new, it is about embracing it, right? Like if we try to avoid it again, if we try to resist it, if we procrastinate on it, if we don't tap into that deeper inner knowing, like we'll never bring it to fruition. It just won't happen. But when we can embrace the newness of creating something that is aligned with our heart and soul, like that's the core of reinventing thyself. Lean into that pivot. Lean into that desire. Lean into that calling. Lean into that whisper that you are experiencing because it's there for a reason. It wouldn't show up if the timing wasn't right. I want you to let that sink in for a second. Okay. So embrace the newness of creating something that's aligned with your heart and soul. That's the core of reinventing thyself. Lean into the pivot, the whisper, the inner knowing, the calling, the courage to take that step into something different, because it wouldn't show up if the timing of it wasn't right. Don't let the ego mind talk you out of it. Just know deep in your soul that yes, it is here for a reason. Is it going to feel like you are standing on a cement foundation? More than likely not. It's going to be ever evolving. And I think that has been one of the hardest things for me, is because I wanted to know it all, right? I wanted to have everything perfect. I wanted that plan mapped out. And honestly, that plan isn't, the plan that I had in my mind isn't the plan that is revealed. It is trusting in that spiritual, that higher guidance, again, whatever and whoever you believe in, that it is happening at the right time, at the right moment. And when we can lean into that place, that's where the beauty of reinventing thyself comes into full circle, into that 360 mode. So this episode isn't very long. It's just kind of one of those beginning intros that I just wanted to share with you. If you find this on a podcast, you may notice I have other episodes there. And again, like I'm just going to leave them there. And actually, I'll probably leave them on my YouTube channel as well, just so that you can see, like, this isn't my first go around either. Like this is, I have evolved to this over probably a decade of work. And it doesn't have to be that long for you, but you have to take some action to embrace that newness, whether that is reading books or listening to podcasts or finding a mentor, whatever it is for you. Don't let that ego mind talk you out of leaning into that pivot, because again, it's showing up for a reason. Explore that and lean into it. And as I mentioned before, I'll be bringing some interviews, interviewing some people so that they can share their journey and that you can find that connection piece so that you can allow your journey to unfold exactly the way it is supposed to. So until next time, I encourage you to really embrace the newness that is showing up for you, whatever that may be, and allow that newness to just create something new for you that is aligned with your heart and soul, because that is the core of reinventing thyself. And by the way, if you're looking for some shortcuts, I do have a download available for you that I don't think it's your typical shortcuts. You may be somewhat surprised when you grab those. So you can get that at www.reinventingthyself.com. So until next time, I hope you have an amazing day, and let me know what you're taking away from this episode. Take care. Well, what are you waiting for? Whether you've pivoted and are unsure or you're on the verge of pivoting, there is no better time than now for you to begin. Want to know why? Because if it wasn't the right time, the pivot wouldn't have shown up. And to get you started, I've got 3 shortcuts to reinventing thyself. Just head on over to www.reinventingthyself.com and you can download it there. And don't forget to message me with the shortcut that resonates with you the most. One last thing, I know you and I are not the only ones that have leaned into the pivot. Be sure to share this with others so they can be supported too. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you for supporting me and sharing this message. Until next time.